Hello friends, today's topic is SSL Handshake. Now you might be probably thinking what is new about this SSL Handshake. It's a very old topic. Actually it is. But see, there are few things that you need to understand. The SSL Handshake that you have been studying so far, that was an old one. That was called as TLS 1.2 Handshake. Currently there is a new standard. It's been almost there from the last from 2018, probably 5 years. It is in picture. That's called TLS 1.3 Handshake. So that is a major upgrade from the old Handshake TLS 1.2. There are many security things that have been introduced. Right now in this particular video, this is the part 1 of the series, we will be discussing about the old Handshake, because it happens that even after being there for quite some time, in my interviews, I have seen many candidates struggling with the questions related to this SSL Handshake. So let's just deep dive into it so that you can understand the concept behind it, not just the overview. This is what you see as the TLS 1.2 Handshake. Every TLS 1.2 Handshake or every handshake would start with a basic TCP connection first. So here you see on the top, this one that you see, this is called the TCP Handshake. So in the TCP handshake, the basic things, SYN, SYNAC, ACK, these are done. You already are aware of this concept, so no need to discuss further on that part. We'll discuss about the client hello part, which is starting from this particular point. So in the client hello that you can see, what you generally know about that client hello. You know that there is a cipher suit, a collection of cipher suit that is sent, compression algorithm, encryption algorithm, hashing algorithm, multiple things are sent to the other side. But apart from this, there are a few other things that are very important that you need to understand, and they are the ones that are asked in the interviews. So you need to be aware about those things. So the two important things that are sent apart from the regular ones that we already discussed, these are called, the first one is SNI and the second one is called a random number. So the most of the questions that you would get on the SSL handshake would be on these two. Okay, so regarding the SNI part, this is the thing that we are discussing, SNI. So this SNI, this I have already discussed in one of my videos on this same channel. So that's an in-depth explanation of the SNI, server name indication, and how it works, what's the logic behind it, and what's the errors, consequences, importance. Everything has been discussed that might be asked in the interviews, almost everything there. So you can just watch that video. Just to give you a brief overview, SNI, that as the name says, server name indication. So what this does is, basically it is a request that is sent in the client hello packet specifying which website or which server this particular client wants to access. So this is the goal of this SNI. Now why it is so important? See, you might have seen errors while trying to access websites. Address bar, where you normally see the padlock for an HTTPS website. In some cases, you just don't see that, just the padlock. You see a red line there, a cross sort of line. Apart from this, you see common name mismatch errors. You see some private connection errors and multiple different things that I have discussed in my SNI video. So these all things you see. So this particular SNI is so important because it clarifies exactly which website this client is trying to access, so that the server can provide the correct certificate. And if it can provide a correct certificate and then the client is able to validate that part, that means your entire access to that website is actually genuine. You have come to the correct place, correct website, so everything is okay. This SNI is so important. Now the other thing that is very important is a random number. Why it is so important? As you can see from the name, it says random number. That means a randomly generated number by a random number generator. That's a tool. The specialty of this random number is it can never be generated the exact same twice or again the next time. Whatever is generated once, it can never be generated the same again. It would always be a different number. Now what is so special about this? It says random number, it should behave like this. The special thing about this is it can prevent replay attacks, anti-replay. So how it does that? What exactly you mean by replay attacks? Okay, so let's say you want to send this client hello You have already sent this client hello with all these cyber suits, compression algorithm, all these things that you have sent out. Now if there is a hacker in between who wants to hack this connection, who want to hijack it and take control of it, get the information or read the packets or whatever, all these things. Now what makes this TLS so secure? This particular thing that says random number. He can send this client hello message with everything, but he won't be able to replicate or produce the same random number. That's a very important of this random number. That means a hacker would be able to present everything in the same way, a duplicate client hello to the same server in an attempt to hijack the website or hack the website or get some information. But he won't be able to do that just because the server would reject his request due to this random number not matching the previous one, the client hello that was there. Apart from all this, there is also one important thing that is called a session ID. It is required. Let's say a client is attempting to perform a resumed handshake. There was a handshake that was done previously and this client wants to resume the same handshake again. So in this particular case, he would just provide the session ID to the server and server would understand, okay, this is the old handshake that client wants to resume. So let's proceed with that. So till this part, the client hello is done. Now it's the turn of the server. Server sends a server hello in response to the client hello. What would the server hello include? Server hello include whatever the client had sent. Server would choose the best and the common. Just remember, it should be the best and the common between the client and the server, because server is most of the time on a higher scale. These are websites that are accessed by thousands and millions of users, so obviously they have to keep themselves updated. So in 99% of the cases, servers would be mostly updated as compared to the client. So server would always have the advantage on that part. But in this case, when the server hello would be done, server would choose a protocol version that the client sent in his list, that these are the protocols or highest TLS versions that I support. So the server would choose one of the protocols, one of the TLS protocols that is common but still the highest, whatever both the parties support. So let's say the server supports up till 1.3, okay, but the client support only up till 1.2. So in this case, 1.3 would not be supported because client doesn't support that. Only 1.2 would be selected. So this is one part. The second thing is cipher suits, compression method, encryption, hashing, all those things. These would be selected from the choices that were offered by the client. So this is one important thing. Now the same session ID concept would be there, that would be provided. After the server hello is done, the server would send the certificate message. So what does the certificate message contains? It contains the certificate of the server along with the public key. Why it is important, I'll let you know in the later part. Just for now, please understand that this is the way by which server can prove itself that it is the genuine server that the client is trying to access with the certificate only. So we'll come to know in the next part here. Now after the server certificate is sent, there is one optional thing that's called server key exchange. It may be sent, it might not be sent, depending on the information, if it is lacking in the certificate message or not. If it is complete in the certificate message itself, there is no need for this server key exchange to be sent. The third part would be a server hello done. All these three things would be sent together. So server hello done would be done, indicating that it is done with the handshake negotiation. So that part is done finally. Now client would first validate this server certificate and would get out the public key from it. The server certificate validation, I have explained in one of the slides in the same video in depth how the server certificate validation is done by the client. That is a very important question being asked in the interview, so please understand that clearly. It would be discussed shortly. Once the server validation is done, once the client would get the public key from that certificate, now what would happen is client would send a message called as client key exchange. This message would contain a pre-master secret. Now this pre-master secret would be wrapped, would be encrypted using the public key of the server that we found in that server certificate. Now why it is done? See, this public and private key pair is developed very smartly. It is a mathematical calculation that is done. The fact about this is, if something is encrypted using the public key, it can only be decrypted by the same set private key, and vice versa. That means if something is encrypted with a private key, it can only be decrypted by the same set public key. Okay, so in this case, pre-master secret is encrypted using the public key of the server. So in that case, the private key that is already with the server would be used to decrypt this pre-master secret and get it. And that private key is confidential only with the server. Okay, so with this method, the pre-master secret that the client generated, it would be sent out to the server. Now, here are few important things that you need to understand. Till this particular part, these sending the pre-master secret, till this part, this asymmetric encryption was going on. Asymmetric as in using the public and private key pairs. Whenever two different types of keys are used, that is called as asymmetric. One is a public key, one is a private key. So till this point where the pre-master secret was sent to the server, now this asymmetric encryption part is done. Now going beyond, the symmetric part would continue. Why? Because now onwards there would be single key that would be used, not two different keys. So if interviewer asks you till what point of time asymmetric encryption is used in the SSL handshake and after what step this symmetric encryption is used, so you should be clear about it. Okay, so now when the pre-master secret is sent to the server, now both parties have a few common things with them. In the first client hello, client sent the client random number. In the server hello, server sent the server random number. So both these things, client random and server random, are exchanged between the both parties. So both of them have the exact same thing. Now the third thing, this pre-master secret that was generated by the client but was sent to the server. So that means it is with both of them. Now there are three things: client random, server random, and pre-master secret. These are with client and server. Okay, now what would happen is, using these three details, client random, server random, and pre-master secret, they would prepare or they would come up with a master secret on both the ends separately. They would not disclose it to each other, but since everything is same, so they would get the exact same master secret without even exchanging that. Okay, so now master secret we have got. Going forward, there would be only symmetric encryption using a single key. Now with this master secret being created, now they would test it and would make sure that both sides are understanding the same language. Okay, so now what would happen is, the client would send a change cipher spec message. Change cipher spec message, the one that you see here, change cipher spec message. This change cipher spec message basically says that whatever I'm going to send you from now onwards, that would be encrypted using the master secret. So the master secret that was created from both ends, this particular message would be encrypted using that. Now what is the benefit of this? It would go to the other side, this server side. Server would already have that master secret. It would go ahead and decrypt this message and would read and confirm to the client that yes, he has understood that. Okay, so this part is done. That means server has validated the master secret. Now the same thing the server would repeat. He would also send the change cipher spec message, change the same thing that the client sent. He would encrypt a message with the master secret, would send it to the client, and the client would also decrypt that. After each of the client change cipher messages, there is a finished message that you see. This finished message is often ignored, and most people don't even know the importance of this finished message. They just say that okay, the handshake is finished, that's why this finished message is sent. There is a very high importance of this finished message. What exactly the importance is? It would create a hash and a MAC of this entire conversation starting from client hello just before the finished message. So this finished message would contain that. It would be encrypted message. Finished message would be encrypted again using the master secret. So both these things would be encrypted. Now this finished message, why it is so important? This finished message is important because it contains a complete hash, and the best part about the hash is, and this hash is irreversible. That means, let's say the change that you made previously due to which the hash got changed, let's say you correct that back to what it was, the hash would never come back to the original value. Once it is changed, that means it is changed forever. So this is the best part of this hashing. Now this finished message, since it contains the hash from the starting client hello till this point of time, that means this would validate from both the points. Both parties would send this finish message confirming that both parties are on the same page, their hashes are exactly the same. This finish message hash the server would decrypt, and the server would send a finish message of the same hash the client would decrypt, confirming that both have the same hash values. So don't ignore the importance of this finish message, it's very important actually. Now coming on after this part, now this particular thing that you are seeing, it was using the master secret. Now going forward, using this master secret, session keys would be created for application data or keeping it secure, and going further session keys would be created based on the master secret, and going further they would be used, but it would still be a symmetric encryption only. So this was all about the SSL handshake so far. Now there are few important questions that are asked in the interviews. The first one that we have already discussed, till what point asymmetric encryption is used and what point going on symmetric encryption is used. There is one important question related to this. It says, the question is asked, when we know that asymmetric keys are much stronger as compared to the symmetric keys, then why don't we use only the asymmetric keys in the entire handshake? Why we use two different keys? So the answer to this particular question is, obviously the asymmetric keys are much stronger, there is no doubt about it. They are much complex, but due to that fact they create a lot of computational burden, while in place of it the symmetric keys are way smaller, very smaller than the asymmetric ones, so they require less computational burden. They don't produce that much burden on the machine on which they are being run. So due to this less computational burden and less overhead of the symmetric keys, they are used in the process downwards. But prior to this, since we require strong TLS handshake, we don't need a compromise on that part, so we use the asymmetric keys for the initial part. Now this is the thing that is very important, that is the most important question that is asked in the interviews. How would a client validate the server certificate? So this is the same thing that we discussed right here. If you see, server hello send the certificate to the client. After this part, a server certificate validation was done by the client. Now how it was done? Now just to give you a brief overview, before the server validation you should understand how a server certificate is created actually. In order to get a server certificate, server has to reach to a authority known as certificate authority. In order to reach the certificate authority, it needs a CSR. CSR is a certificate signing request. So that means through this CSR request, it is requesting the certificate authority to validate this particular server and to provide his stamp of verification that yes, this server is genuine, so that everyone can trust this server. This is very important for the server. The certificate authority would validate everything, would check the website, name, issuer name, serial number, everything would be checked. And after checking everything, the certificate authority would provide its validation, would provide its stamp in the form of a certificate authority signature. So that would be called as a signature of CA. So that would be provided on the CSR request that came in. Once the CSR is signed in, it becomes a certificate. Now CA authority would not sign it directly. It would first create a hash of it. This hash value that's CA, it would create a hash of it and then would go ahead and sign it. This is very important, so that in case something is changed, let's say you are signing it, let's say just now understand this part. Let's say like we humans sign it, let's say this is some content, okay, and you signed it at the very bottom. Okay, so now understand the risk of it. Let's say after you signing it, someone writes one line here, but you already signed it and sent it. This is the proof that you have read all the documentation and then signed it. That's why if you remember, we always say that always read everything before signing in, and if something doesn't need to be filled out, then obviously just cross it out or just mark it like, so that no one is able to fill that. So this is the exact same thing that is done here as well. Now the server has to sign. Let's say if it signs the CSR without even creating a hash of it, then there is a possibility that something here might be changed, but everyone would still trust it because it is a sign from the CA, certificate authority. That's why it never signs the CSR directly. It always create a hash and then it signs the hash and then it attach that sign to the certificate itself to prove that yes, I have signed it, it is genuine, and I have signed what is included in the hash part of it. So this is how a certificate is created. Now why I explained about the certificate creation? Because it is the same concept that is used in the certificate validation as well. Now what would exactly happen is, first this particular part, the server would send a certificate to the client. This part is okay. Now when we say client, we have been repeating client, client, client. What exactly is a client? Client is not you. Client is the browser through which you are trying to access the website. So on the top of the browser, you would see in the address bar the website name, the padlock icon, and all those things. So this browser is actually the client that we are discussing here. Now what would happen is, this browser would check for the validation to ensure that yes, trusted CA has signed it. How it would check that? If you have noticed, in the browser there are certificate. There is a certificate store. In that certificate store there is trusted root certificate authorities, trusted root CAs. That is a well-known store that is in the browser itself. Now this browser would have the trusted certificate authorities, public keys for every known ones, every known trusted CAs. That means GoDaddy, VeriSign, GlobalSign, all those things, multiple different trusted CAs. All their public keys are already there in the browser's trusted certificate authorities store. Now what is the importance of those public keys? Using those public keys, because see, now every certificate that is signed by a CA, the CA uses his private key to sign that certificate, not the public key, because the public key is shared globally. So obviously it would not use that, but private key is always kept to that particular party who is signing it, in this case the CA. So CA would use his private key to sign it. And if you remember from our previous conversation, there is a very important advantage of this public private key pair. If something is encrypted using a private key, it can only be decrypted using the public key. The same concept is applied here. The browser already has the public keys inside for the reputed CAs. One of them is this particular CA who has signed the certificate. Now using the public key of the certificate authority, it would decrypt the certificate and would get the hash of it, of the CSR value, and then signed it. That means encrypted it. When the certificate would be passed, what we would get is, we would get a CSR, and along with this we would get an encrypted hash of the CSR. What the browser would do is, browser would create a hash of the CSR using a hashing algorithm that was already discussed in that handshake part in the client hello packet. That hashing algorithm was discussed. Now using that same hashing algorithm, it would create a hash of the CSR. That by doing this, what he would get is a hash CSR. Now if hash CSR is got, now in that case it would decrypt that encrypted hash CSR that we got from the certificate, and we would first decrypt that encrypted hash of the CSR and we would get a normal hash CSR. Now we would, from the CSR, from the original CSR that we got from the certificate, the client would create a hash of that CSR. Now we have one CSR that we generated, this one CSR that the browser generated, and there is one hash CSR that we got from the certificate itself. Now the browser would compare both these things. If the hash CSR in this one and the hash CSR from this one are exactly the same, that means there has been no tampering, nothing has been modified, and the certificate is genuine. The server has sent us the correct certificate, hence this certificate is validated. So this is the entire system of certificate validation or verification, how it is done by the client. Since this video have gone quite lengthy now, so we would just end this video, this part 1 here itself. In the next part, we would go ahead and discuss about some facts about SSL handshake, some problems with the TLS 1.1 handshake, and what's new in the TLS 1.3 handshake, and what is the TLS 1.3 handshake, that we would discuss in the coming part, the part 2 of the same video. For now, we would end up this. Thank you so much for your time. You have a great day ahead.